Welcome, dear traveler, to another long journey through the mists of ancient memory. Tonight, we embark together on a path that winds through the eternal winter of Slavic mythology, where gods walk among frost-touched forests and spirits dance in the spaces between snowflakes. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight, as we prepare to spend these next 3 hours together, exploring realms where time moves differently, where stories breathe with the rhythm of ancient drums, and where the boundary between waking and dreaming grows thin as morning ice. Here on Boring Mythology, we journey slowly, deliberately, letting each tale unfold like smoke from a sacred fire. Tonight's Odyssey will carry us through 7 interconnected chambers of Slavic legend, each one opening into the next like rooms in a vast, dreaming palace of story. As you settle into your chosen place of rest, whether beneath warm blankets or simply finding stillness wherever you are, know that this journey has been crafted to accompany you through the entire night. There will be no sudden turns, no jarring moments, only the steady, gentle current of narrative carrying you deeper into realms where winter never ends, yet somehow never grows cold enough to harm those who enter with open hearts. Let us begin by painting the world we're about to enter, layer by patient layer, like frost forming on a window pane. Picture, if you will, a landscape that exists in the space between seasons, in that eternal moment where autumn's last breath meets winter's first whisper. The air here carries a quality of crystalline clarity, where every sound travels pure and undiminished across vast distances. Pine trees stand like ancient sentinels, their branches heavy with snow that has fallen for countless ages, yet never quite manages to break them. The snow itself is not ordinary snow. It glimmers with an inner light, as if each flake contains a fragment of starlight, captured and held in perpetual suspension. In this landscape, paths wind between the trees, paths that have been worn not by human feet, but by the passage of beings far older. These paths shift when no one watches them, rearranging themselves according to laws that predate human understanding. Sometimes they lead to clearings where the moon shines impossibly bright, illuminating circles of standing stones that hum with frequencies just below the threshold of hearing. Other times, they descend into valleys where mist gathers thick as wool, and within that mist, shapes move that might be deer or might be something else entirely, something that only chooses to appear as deer when human eyes attempt to perceive it. The sky above this realm never quite decides whether it wants to be day or night. Instead, it dwells in that liminal space of eternal twilight, where the sun might be setting or might be rising, but never quite commits to either. The light has a quality of amber and silver mixed together, casting shadows that seem to have more substance than the objects that cast them. These shadows remember things. They remember the first winter, when the world was young and the gods still walked openly among mortals. They remember the battles fought in the sky between thunder and serpent, between order and chaos, between the high places and the deep. Water runs through this landscape in streams that never freeze, no matter how cold the air becomes. These streams sing as they flow, and their songs tell stories older than human language. If you listen carefully, you can almost understand them, almost grasp the meanings that dance just beyond the edge of comprehension. The water is dark and clear at once, reflecting not just the sky above, but also another sky, a sky from another time or another world, where different stars wheel in patterns that spell out different destinies. Throughout this realm, you'll encounter structures that seem both ancient and eternal. Wooden houses that appear to have grown from the earth itself rather than being built. Their walls made from trees that still live, still breathe, still dream. Stone circles that predate memory, where each stone contains the compressed wisdom of mountains. Bridges that span not just rivers, but also the spaces between worlds. The planks worn smooth by the passage of feet, both human and decidedly not. And moving through all of this, like blood through veins or sap through trees, is the presence of the old powers. They don't always show themselves directly, these ancient forces. Sometimes they're just a whisper in the wind that makes you turn your head. Sometimes they're the reason a particular shadow falls differently than it should. Sometimes they're the explanation for why certain clearings feel watched, even when they appear empty. Tonight, we will meet these powers face to face. We'll witness the eternal conflict between Perun, god of thunder, whose hammer strikes echo through all the worlds, and Veles, the serpent deity who dwells in the roots of reality, guardian of the dead and the wealth hidden in the earth. We'll walk through the kingdom of Morana, where death is not an ending, but a transformation, where ice preserves memory and spring is always waiting, patient as stone, for its time to return. We'll follow the flight of the Firebird through midnight skies, watching as its feathers scatter light like seeds, each one potentially capable of granting a wish or cursing the wisher, depending on the heart that reaches for it. We'll approach, with appropriate caution and respect, the chicken-legged house of Baba Yaga, which turns and dances on its fowl's feet, sometimes here, sometimes there, sometimes in all places at once, housing a witch who is simultaneously the most dangerous and the most necessary being in all the tales. We'll climb the world tree, that vast ash or oak whose roots reach down into the underworld and whose branches support the heavens, where different realms nest like birds among the leaves. We'll hear the songs of the Rusalka, those water spirits who were once human, who remember what it was to breathe air instead of water, who dance in the space between life and death, between sorrow and joy. And we'll experience the mysteries of Kupala night, when the veil grows so thin that magic doesn't just exist but overflows. When ferns bloom with flowers that grant the power to understand the language of all living things. When bonfires burn not just wood, but also the boundaries between possible and impossible. Each of these stories connects to the others like chambers in a vast underground palace, or like the organs in a living body. The thunder of Perun's hammer awakens the Firebird from its nest in the world tree. The world tree's roots reach down into Veles' realm and Morana's kingdom. Baba Yaga knows the secret names of the Rusalka, who rise from their waters on Kupala night to dance in circles that mirror the turning of the chicken-legged house. Everything connects. Everything flows into everything else, like streams converging into rivers, rivers into seas, seas into the great ocean that surrounds all the worlds. As we begin this journey, let your breathing slow and deepen. Let your muscles release whatever tension they've been holding from the day. The stories we're about to explore have been told for thousands of years, in countless variations, around countless fires, to countless listeners who, like you, sought to understand the great mysteries through the lens of tale and myth. You're joining an ancient tradition tonight, becoming part of a chain of listening that stretches back to the very first winter, when the very first storyteller looked at the very first snow and wondered what gods might live within its crystalline structure. The path ahead winds through dark forests and moonlit clearings, across rivers that remember everything they've ever reflected, through kingdoms where different rules apply. But you're safe on this journey. These are old stories, well-worn paths. Others have walked them before you, and others will walk them after. Tonight, you're simply taking your turn, adding your footprints to the countless others. You're listening to the great conversation between humanity and mystery that has been ongoing since consciousness first sparked in the darkness. So settle deeper into comfort, dear traveler. Let the ordinary world with its ordinary concerns fade like morning mist. We're entering the realm of eternal winter now, where gods wage wars that never end and never truly begin, where death is just another form of life, where firebirds trail light across skies that have never known the harsh brightness of noon. We're entering the place where stories live when no one is telling them, where they wait, patient as mountains, for their time to be spoken again. The first thunder is already rolling across the eternal sky. Can you hear it? Low and distant now, but growing closer, always growing closer, never quite arriving, but always approaching. Like a storm that exists in permanent approach, in permanent potential, in permanent power. The sound grows from distant rumble to present reality, and in that sound lives the entire cosmos of Slavic understanding, the great divide that shapes all other divisions. First there is sky, then there is earth, then there is what lies beneath. First there is order, then there is chaos, then there is the dance between them. First there is Perun, then there is Veles, then there is their eternal conflict that keeps the worlds in motion. Feel the mountain beneath you now, though you haven't moved from where you rest. This is Perun's mountain, the great height from which the thunder god surveys all the realms. The air here is thin and pure, carrying the scent of lightning even when no storm clouds gather. The rocks themselves remember every thunderbolt that has ever struck them, and they hum with that memory, a deep thrumming that you feel more than hear, that resonates in your bones like the echo of the first word ever spoken. Perun stands at the summit, and his presence is overwhelming without being oppressive. He is tall as the sky needs him to be, broad as thunder's echo, solid as the mountain itself. His beard flows like storm clouds, dark and silver simultaneously, constantly moving even when he stands perfectly still. In his right hand, he holds his hammer, or perhaps his axe. The stories disagree, or perhaps the weapon simply changes based on the need, based on the nature of the conflict at hand. This weapon has a name that thunder speaks every time it strikes, a name that human tongues cannot quite form, though they've tried with words like Mjolnir's cousin, or the stone of heaven, or simply the striker. His eyes contain the flash that comes before thunder, that moment of absolute illumination when everything is revealed, every shadow banished, every hidden thing exposed. But the light passes quickly, leaving after images that dance in different colors, leaving you to wonder what exactly you saw in that instant of total clarity. His armor is made from clouds hammered solid, from rain frozen at the moment of falling, from the pause between inhale and exhale when the storm gathers its strength. Around him, wheel his eagles, great birds whose wingspans could cover villages, whose cries pierce the veils between worlds. They are his eyes when his own are closed, his messengers when his voice would be too much for mortal ears to bear. Their feathers are edged with lightning, leaving brief tears in the sky as they fly, tears that heal immediately but leave scars in the air that sensitive souls can still perceive. Generations later, but Perun does not stand alone in his eternal vigil. His attention is always directed downward, always focused on the great enemy, the necessary enemy, the enemy without whom his own existence would lose its meaning. For there, coiled around the roots of the world tree, in the spaces between spaces, in the caves that connect all caves, dwells Veles. Where Perun is sky, Veles is earth and under-earth. Where Perun is order, Veles is the creative chaos from which new forms emerge. Where Perun guards the boundaries, Veles delights in crossing them, in blurring them, in demonstrating that boundaries are, after all, just agreements that can be renegotiated. Descend now from the mountain's peak, down through the cloud layer where water droplets hang suspended like tiny worlds, down through the realm of birds and into the realm of beasts, down past where trees grow and into the places where only mushrooms and pale things flourish, down into the great below, where Veles makes his primary home. The journey downward is also a journey inward, for Veles rules not just the physical underground, but also the underground of the soul, the hidden desires, the secret knowledge, the wisdom that can only be gained by descending. Veles appears differently to everyone who sees him, because he is the god of shapes as well as shadows. Sometimes he is a great serpent, scales darker than the space between stars, eyes that hold the green fire of swamps and the golden fire of treasure. His serpent form is so vast that when he moves, earthquakes ripple across the surface world. His breathing creates the mists that rise from marshes at dawn, and his dreams become the will-o'-the-wisps that lead travelers astray or to treasure, depending on the traveler's heart and Veles' mood. Sometimes he appears as a bear, massive and shambling, wise with the wisdom of hibernation, powerful with the power of one who knows both wake and sleep intimately. In this form, his fur holds all the shadows of all the forests, and when he shakes himself, those shadows fly off like birds and roost in new places, creating pools of darkness where secrets can be whispered safely. Sometimes he is human-shaped, but never quite human, wearing rich robes that seem to be woven from darkness itself, decorated with threads of gold that might be actual gold or might be the last light of dying stars. His beard rivals Perun's, but grows downward like roots rather than outward like clouds. His crown is made from the horns of every animal that has ever lived, a constantly shifting assemblage that never looks the same twice. But most often, most truly, Veles is all of these things at once, a being of multiplicities, of contradictions held in perfect tension. He is the god of cattle and wealth, yet also the god of the dead. He is the guardian of musicians and poets, yet also the prince of thieves. He is the keeper of magical knowledge, yet also the spirit of mischief and disorder. He contains multitudes, and those multitudes contain multitudes of their own. The conflict between Perun and Veles is not a simple matter of good versus evil. The Slavic cosmos never developed such stark binaries. Instead, their conflict is the conflict between necessary opposites, between the force that builds and the force that tests what is built, between the power that maintains and the power that transforms. Without Perun, Veles would pull everything down into primordial chaos. Without Veles, Perun would crystallize everything into stasis. Together, locked in their eternal struggle, they create the dynamic tension that keeps the worlds alive and growing. The pattern of their conflict follows the rhythm of seasons, though in this eternal winter realm, the seasons are more metaphorical than literal. Veles steals something from Perun, cattle in the oldest versions of the story, though the cattle might represent clouds or wealth or the waters of life or human souls or all of these simultaneously. He drives them down into his underground realm, hiding them in the great cave that exists in all caves, the cave that every physical cave echoes. Perun discovers the theft, and his rage shakes all the worlds. His eagles scout the entire cosmos, their cries echoing through every realm. When they locate Veles' hiding place, Perun descends from his mountain, and his descent is like the arrival of the storm. The sky darkens not with absence of light, but with presence of power. The air becomes electric, making hair stand on end, making metal sing, making stones split from internal pressure. The battle, when it comes, is cosmic in scope. Perun's hammer strikes with the force of all thunder combined, each blow creating new mountains or destroying old ones. The sound reshapes the air itself, creating new winds, new weather patterns, new ways for clouds to form. Where his weapon strikes the earth, springs burst forth, or trees instantly grow to full height, or circles of mushrooms appear that will fruit for 1,000 years. Veles fights back with cunning as much as strength. He changes shape constantly, becoming a serpent one moment, a tree the next, a stream the following instant. He summons mists that confuse even divine eyes, creates illusions that make one mountain appear to be 100 mountains. One cave seem to be all caves. He calls upon the dead who serve him, and they rise not as shambling horrors, but as they were in life, ready to defend their patron with the cleverness they learned from living and the fearlessness they gained from dying. The battle rages across all three realms. The heavens shake with Perun's thunder. The earth cracks with their impact. The underworld trembles as Veles retreats deeper and deeper into his domain. Mountains are reduced to valleys, valleys filled to become plains, plains cracked open to reveal the bones of the earth. The world tree itself sways, its leaves falling like rain, each leaf carrying a small piece of fate that will land somewhere and change someone's destiny. But here is the secret, the mystery at the heart of their conflict. Neither god truly wishes to destroy the other. They have fought this battle countless times before, and they will fight it countless times again, because the fighting itself is what matters, not the victory. Each time Perun wins, driving Veles back into the deepest caves, order is restored, but also renewed, made fresh by having been tested. Each time Veles escapes to steal again, chaos is given its due, ensuring that order never becomes tyranny. Watch now as the current iteration of their eternal battle reaches its climax. Perun has cornered Veles at the base of the world tree, where the great serpent has coiled himself around the roots, threatening to squeeze the life from the tree itself if Perun strikes. It's a standoff that has happened before, will happen again, is perhaps always happening in some eternal now that exists outside of linear time. Perun raises his hammer high, and for a moment, all the lightning that has ever existed or ever will exist, gathers in that weapon. The eagles circle overhead, their cries creating a symphony of anticipation. The very air holds its breath. And then the hammer falls, but not on Veles directly. Instead, it strikes the ground beside the world tree, and from that strike, a great river bursts forth, a river that will flow through all the realms, carrying life and death in equal measure. Veles, laughing with a sound like distant thunder's echo, disappears into the water, becoming the current itself, flowing away to fight another day. Perun returns to his mountain, his duty done for now, his order restored for now, his vigilance beginning anew because he knows, as surely as thunder follows lightning, that Veles will return. The cycle will continue. The dance will go on. And in that continuation, in that eternal recursion, life itself finds its rhythm. But the thunder grows distant now, and the waters that burst from Perun's strike flow in a particular direction, carrying us along with them, away from the cosmic battlefield and toward a different realm, a quieter realm, though no less powerful for its quietness. The waters grow cold as they flow, colder than water should be able to be while still remaining liquid. Ice forms along the banks, and in that ice, shapes begin to appear, shapes that might be reflections or might be something watching from the other side of the frozen mirror. The river carries us now toward the domain of one who watches all battles with equal interest and equal dispassion. One who knows that every conflict, no matter how eternal it seems, must eventually find its resolution in her embrace. The waters are carrying us to the kingdom of Morana, where death wears a crown of frozen flowers, and spring waits, sleeping beneath blankets of eternal snow. The temperature drops with each moment of our journey along this river that Perun's hammer birthed from solid stone. Ice forms in patterns that seem almost like writing, almost like musical notation, almost like the tracks of birds that have never existed. The sky above transitions from the electric aftermath of divine battle to something softer, quieter, though no less profound. This is the light of deep winter, when the sun seems more like a memory of warmth than an actual source of heat, when shadows have more substance than the objects that cast them. The river begins to slow, its waters thickening without freezing, moving like honey, like mercury, like liquid silver that remembers being solid. Along the banks, trees appear that have never known spring, their branches bare not from autumn's taking, but from never having held leaves at all. These are the trees of Morana's realm, and they grow in patterns that mirror the branching of veins in a body, the spreading of cracks in ice, the diverging of possibilities in a life approaching its end. A figure stands by the riverside, though standing might not be the right word. She is there, has perhaps always been there, will perhaps always be there, waiting with the patience of winter itself. At first, she might seem to be made of morning mist, a suggestion of form rather than form itself. But as your perception adjusts to the different rules of this realm, she becomes more solid, though solid in the way that ice is solid, seemingly firm, but always ready to change state, to flow, to vanish into vapor. This is Morana, and she is not what the stories have led you to expect. The tales speak of her as Death's Queen, Winter's Bride, the ender of things. All of this is true, but truth, like ice, has many facets, each reflecting light differently. She is tall, taller than human tall, with skin that shifts between the white of fresh snow and the blue of deep ice. Her hair flows like a frozen waterfall, each strand containing the memory of water's movement captured at the moment of crystallization. Her dress is woven from the last breaths of everything that has ever lived, which sounds morbid until you see it, until you realize that last breaths, gathered together, create a fabric more beautiful than silk, more precious than gold. It shifts constantly, showing glimpses of lives ended, but ended in the way that sentences end, with completion rather than interruption. The dress rustles with a sound like snow falling on snow, like pages turning in an ancient book, like whispers of goodbye that are also whispers of until we meet again. Her crown is not made of metal or jewels, but of frozen flowers, each one caught at the moment of perfect bloom and held there eternally. These are not flowers that died and were then frozen, but flowers that exist in a state of perpetual ending that never quite completes, perpetual beginning that never quite starts. They have colors that don't exist in the world of the living, the blue of last thoughts, the silver of final words, the transparent purple of dreams dissolving into dreamlessness. But it's her eyes that hold you, that make you understand why she is both feared and necessary. They are the color of deep water under ice, that impossible blue-green-black that exists nowhere else in nature. In them, you see not your death, but all your deaths. Every ending you've experienced, every goodbye you've said, every small mortality that has prepared you for the great one. And somehow, in seeing all these endings, you understand that each was also a beginning, each death a birth into something new. She speaks, and her voice is the sound winter makes when no one is listening. The silence between heartbeats, the pause between exhalation and inhalation. Welcome, traveler from the realm of thunder and conflict. You have come to my kingdom, where all battles find their resolution, where all conflicts discover their peace. Here, in the land of ending that never ends, of winter that contains all springs, of death that remembers life more clearly than life remembers itself, she gestures, and you see that you've been standing at the border of her true realm. Beyond the river, beyond the bare trees, stretches a landscape that defies single description. It is a palace and a wilderness simultaneously. It is a garden where nothing grows, yet everything is perfectly preserved. It is a city populated by shadows that might be memories, or might be inhabitants going about their eternal business. The palace aspect reveals itself first. Walls made from compressed snow that has been falling for millennia, compressed until it's harder than stone, clearer than glass. Towers that spiral up into the gray sky, each one topped with a different frozen flame that burns without heat, illuminates without warmth. Gates that stand open because nothing here needs protection. Everything that enters has already accepted the fundamental truth of the place, has already paid the only price required, which is acknowledgement. Walk through these gates, and the rules of the living world adjust, shift, transform. Here, memory has weight and substance. You can see your own memories floating like soap bubbles through the air, each one containing a perfect moment from your life, preserved here in Morana's collection. She gathers these from everyone who passes through, not as theft, but as preservation, ensuring that nothing is ever truly lost, even when it's forgotten by the living world. The inhabitants of this realm move through the palace wilderness with purpose, but without urgency. They are the dead. But death here doesn't mean what the living think it means. They are not ghostly, not transparent, not suffering. They are simply in a different state, like water that has become ice or ice that has become vapor. They go about their business, which is the business of remembering, of understanding, of preparing for whatever comes next. Some sit in gardens made of crystal, where frozen fountains capture the motion of water in impossible sculptures. They contemplate, though what they contemplate is beyond living understanding. Others walk in processions that follow paths invisible to living eyes, their footsteps creating music from the frozen ground. Each step a note in a symphony that has been playing since the first thing died and will continue until the last thing is born. In the center of this realm grows a tree, but not the world tree. This is its shadow, or perhaps its reflection, or perhaps what the world tree dreams it is when it sleeps through winter. This tree is made entirely of ice, but ice that lives, that grows, that somehow manages to bloom with flowers made of frozen breath. Each flower, when it falls, which happens rarely and always for a reason, contains a complete life, a full story from first breath to last, preserved in crystalline perfection. Morana moves through her realm with the grace of absolute certainty, of one who knows that everything eventually comes to her. She doesn't walk so much as glide, her dress trailing behind her like a comet's tail, leaving a path of frost that blooms into patterns of incredible intricacy before fading back into smooth ice. You follow, because in this realm, following Morana is as natural as rivers flowing downhill, as inevitable as autumn following summer. She leads you deeper into her palace kingdom, through halls where the walls are made of compressed time, where you can see moments from throughout history frozen like insects in amber, but amber made of ice. Here is the last mammoth, taking its final breath. There is a great warrior, understanding in his last moment that glory is just another word for remembered death. Here is a child's last laugh before becoming an adult, a kind of death that no one mourns, but everyone experiences. Every ending, Morana says, her voice carrying the weight of all winters, is held here. Not just the endings of lives, but the endings of loves, of hopes, of dreams, of civilizations, of stars. People fear me because they think I take these things, but I don't take. I receive, I preserve, I transform. Without me, nothing new could ever begin, because the old would never make space for it. She stops before a pool of water that shouldn't exist here. Water that remains liquid despite the overwhelming cold. The surface is perfectly still, so still it seems solid. But when Morana breathes upon it, ripples spread in patterns that hurt to follow with human eyes. Patterns that exist in more dimensions than 3. Look, she commands gently, and in the water you see the world of the living, but seen from below, from the perspective of death looking up at life. Everything is reversed, but also revealed. You see the terror that drives people to build walls against winter, but also the peace that comes when they finally accept that winter always wins, that walls only delay, never prevent. You see children playing in snow, unconsciously rehearsing for their eventual residence in Morana's realm, finding joy in the very element that will one day claim them. Fragment of ice, fragment of memory, fragment of time frozen at the moment of breaking. In the pool, images flow like liquid moments. A grandmother's last breath becomes her granddaughter's first. A tree falls in a forest, and from its decay, 1,000 lives spring forth. A civilization crumbles, and its ruins become the foundation for something new, something that couldn't have existed if the old had insisted on eternal persistence. The water shows Veles and Perun's eternal battle from a different perspective. From here, from death's viewing place, their conflict looks less like war and more like dance, less like opposition and more like collaboration. Every strike of Perun's hammer that seems to destroy actually creates space for new growth. Every theft of Veles that seems to diminish actually plants seeds for future abundance, and overseeing it all, patient as winter, certain as endings, waits Morana. I am not cruel, she says, and frost forms on the pool's surface as she speaks, creating patterns like the most delicate lace. Cruelty requires intention to cause suffering. I have no such intention. I am simply necessary. I am the pause between breaths, the rest between musical notes, the space between words that allows them to have meaning. Without me, everything would be one continuous, meaningless sound. She turns from the pool and continues deeper into her realm. The architecture here defies physical logic. Stairs descend upward. Doors open onto rooms that are larger than the buildings that contain them. Corridors loop back on themselves while somehow still progressing forward. This is death's geography, where the normal rules of space and time have ended, allowing for new rules, strange rules, rules that the living mind can glimpse but never fully grasp. In one vast hall, made entirely of what appears to be frozen music, stand statues of everyone who has ever lived, is living, or will live. But these aren't static sculptures. They slowly, almost imperceptibly, change, showing each person at every age they've been or will be, cycling through their entire existence in movements so slow that you'd have to watch for years to see a complete revolution. Morana pauses before one, touching it gently, and for a moment it accelerates, showing a complete life in seconds. Birth, growth, joy, sorrow, triumph, defeat, ending. This one, she says, dies tomorrow. A farmer in a distant land who has never heard my name, never known my stories. But he knows me nonetheless. He's felt me in every sunset, every autumn, every goodbye. Tomorrow, when his heart finally stops its long labor, he'll arrive here, and he'll understand that he's been preparing for this arrival his whole life. The statues stretch beyond sight, an infinity of lives, each one unique, each one ending in the same place. The hall itself seems to breathe with their collective existence, a respiration of mortality that creates its own weather. Snow falls upward in some places. Ice forms in spirals that DNA would recognize as kin. Frost writes stories on surfaces in languages that won't be invented for 1,000 years. Temperature here is negotiable. Cold beyond cold in some places, merely cool in others, and in some rare spots, a warmth that has nothing to do with heat and everything to do with the comfort of completion, the peace of arriving exactly where you were always meant to be. Morana leads you to her throne room, though room is inadequate to describe this space. It exists in a state of constant transition between enclosed and infinite, between intimate and vast. The throne itself is carved from a single piece of ice that fell from the first winter sky before there were worlds to catch it. It remembers that fall, and sometimes, if you listen carefully, you can hear the whistle of its descent, a sound that predates all other sounds. She settles onto this throne with the weariness of one who has been receiving visitors since before visiting was invented. Her dress spreads around her like frozen water, like time stopped mid-flow. The frozen flowers in her crown catch light that doesn't exist, reflecting colors that eyes shouldn't be able to see. People mistake me for evil, she says, and her voice now carries harmonics of every last word ever spoken. They paint me as the villain in their stories, the thing to be feared, fought, avoided. But I am not evil. I am not good. I am necessary. I am the period at the end of the sentence, without which the sentence would be meaningless babble. I am the silence that makes music possible. I am the emptiness that allows fullness to have meaning. Around her throne, the dead gather, but not in supplication. They gather as courtiers, as advisors, as companions. They've passed through death and discovered it's not an ending, but a transformation. Not a loss, but a change of state. They whisper to each other in languages made of temperature and pressure, sharing secrets that the living spend their entire lives trying to discover, not knowing that the answer requires the asking to end before it can be understood. One of them steps forward, a shadow of a memory of what might once have been a great queen or a simple peasant. In death, such distinctions matter less than the weight of a snowflake. She speaks, or rather, the concept of her speaking manifests in your understanding. The living fair Morana because they think she takes, but she gives. She gives completion. She gives meaning. Without her, we would be condemned to eternal experience without understanding, eternal accumulation without integration. Morana nods, a gesture that causes snow to fall in reverse throughout her throne room, rising from the ground to disappear into the ceiling that might be sky. Every spring that has ever been, she says, was born here, in my winter kingdom. Every new beginning was first an ending in my halls. I am not the opposite of life. I am life's completion, its fullness, its point. The throne room shifts, and suddenly you see it from a different angle, or perhaps in a different dimension. From this perspective, Morana's kingdom isn't separate from the world of the living, but interpenetrated with it, existing in the same space, but in a different phase. Like two waves occupying the same ocean, but never quite touching. Every living thing carries a piece of her realm within it, a seed of ending that is also a seed of beginning, waiting for the right moment to germinate. But now, through the windows that might be walls, through the walls that might be air, a light appears that doesn't belong to Morana's realm. It's warm, not with the warmth of fire, but with the warmth of life itself, concentrated and purified into visible form. It moves through the sky like a comet, but a comet that flies with purpose, with intent, with joy, rather than the cold mechanics of orbital dynamics. Morana rises from her throne, and for the first time, you see something like surprise on her face, the surprise filtered through the patience of eternity. Ah, she says, the Firebird comes. Even here, in the heart of winter, in the palace of endings, that creature of perpetual renewal dares to fly. Watch, traveler, and see what happens when life's pure essence encounters death's certain truth. Watch and understand that the boundaries between realms are more negotiable than they appear. The light grows closer, and with it comes a sound like singing, but singing that bypasses the ears and resonates directly in the bones, in the blood, in the spaces between atoms. The Firebird approaches, trailing light like a wound in the darkness, and Morana's eternal winter prepares to receive this impossible spring. The Firebird enters Morana's realm not as an intruder, but as a note of music enters a symphony, changing everything while disturbing nothing. Its light doesn't melt the ice or warm the air. Instead, it reveals that ice and fire, cold and heat, death and life are not opposites, but partners in an eternal dance whose steps were choreographed before the first star ignited. Watch as it flies, this creature that shouldn't exist, this paradox given wings and will. The firebird is not simply a bird that burns. It is the principle of transformation itself, wrapped in feathers that are also flames, that are also the aurora borealis, that are also the first light that touched the first eye that could perceive light. Each feather contains a different color, but colors that exist outside the spectrum visible to mortal eyes. Colors like the feeling of recognition, the taste of nostalgia, the sound of tomorrow arriving. Its size shifts constantly, or perhaps it's not shifting, but rather your perception of it can't quite settle on a single interpretation. Sometimes it seems small enough to perch on your palm, a delicate thing of hollow bones and impossible beauty. Other times it fills the entire sky, its wingspan reaching from horizon to horizon, each wing beat creating new weather patterns, new seasons, new possibilities for how time might flow. The firebird's eyes hold the memory of the first fire, the one that taught humanity the difference between raw and cooked, between dark and light, between then and now. But they also hold the promise of the last fire, the one that will consume everything so that everything can begin again. Looking into those eyes is like looking into the heart of a star, if stars had hearts. If hearts were made of nuclear fusion and ancient songs, as it flies through Morana's kingdom, something unprecedented happens. The frozen flowers in the death goddess's crown begin to glow with their own inner light, not melting, but remembering what it was like to be alive, to grow, to reach towards sun that actually warmed rather than merely illuminated. The dead who populate this realm look up from their eternal contemplations, and in their eyes that should hold no warmth, sparks kindle, not of life exactly, but of the memory of life, the echo of life, the promise that life is never truly gone, only transformed. The firebird's flight path traces patterns in the air, and these patterns linger, visible as threads of light that slowly fade but never quite disappear. If you could see all its flight paths throughout all time, you would see that it's weaving something, creating a vast tapestry whose pattern won't be complete until the last moment of the last day of the last age. Each thread is a story of transformation, of something that seemed permanent, discovering it could change, of something that seemed ended, discovering it could begin again. Morana watches with an expression that might be fondness, might be ancient rivalry, might be recognition of an equal. "The firebird," she says, her voice carrying new harmonics, notes of warmth that shouldn't exist in her frozen throat, "is the only thing that enters my realm without dying. It cannot die because it was never truly born. It exists in the space between states, always transforming, never transformed, always burning, never consumed." The firebird circles the palace of frozen time, and where its light touches, memories stir. Not memories of the dead, but memories held in the ice itself, in the frozen ground, in the air that has been still for eons. These memories predate human consciousness, predate life as we understand it. They are memories of when the cosmos was young and didn't yet know it would grow old, when possibility was infinite and limitation hadn't yet been invented. Now the great bird descends, not landing, but hovering at a height where its presence can be felt without its heat destroying. This close, you can see that each feather is itself a tiny world, complete with its own stories, its own cycles of creation and destruction. In one feather, civilizations rise and fall in the span of a heartbeat. In another, a single moment of perfect love is preserved and repeated endlessly. In yet another, the solution to every problem that has ever plagued conscious beings is written in letters of fire, but in a language that won't be invented for 1,000,000 years. The Firebird speaks, though speak isn't the right word. It communicates through the modulation of its light, through the patterns of heat it generates, through the way it causes the frozen air to shimmer. Its message bypasses language and arrives directly as understanding. I fly through all realms, through all times, through all possibilities. I have seen the first winter and the last spring. I have carried messages between gods who forgot they were related, between lovers separated by death, between versions of the same person scattered across different realities. I am the proof that boundaries are suggestions, that rules are negotiations, that even death is just another state of being. The Firebird's tale streams behind it like a comet, but a comet made of every dawn that has ever broken, every candle that has ever been lit against the darkness, every hope that has ever kindled in a desperate heart. The tail feathers scatter occasionally, drifting down like falling stars, and where they land, even in this realm of eternal winter, something shifts. Not melting, not warming, but shifting in ways that suggest that ice and fire might be able to coexist, might even need each other. One such feather drifts near you, and instinctively, you reach for it. The moment your fingers make contact, you understand something profound about the nature of transformation. You see your own life not as a linear progression from birth to death, but as a spiral, constantly circling back to the same themes, but at different levels, with different understanding. You see that every ending you've experienced was also a beginning, every death a birth, every loss a transformation into something new. But touching the feather also shows you the price of transformation. The Firebird, for all its beauty and power, is alone. It cannot rest, cannot settle, cannot know the peace of completion that Morana offers. It is condemned to eternal flight, eternal change, eternal burning without being consumed. It is the restlessness at the heart of existence, the dissatisfaction that drives evolution, the hunger that can never be fully satisfied because satisfaction would mean the end of growth. The Firebird rises again, preparing to continue its eternal flight. But before it goes, it performs a dance in the air, a series of movements that create patterns of light that remain burned into your perception even after you close your eyes. The dance tells a story without words, a story about how fire needs something to burn, how light needs darkness to define it, how life needs death to give it meaning. Morana watches this dance with the patience of eternity, and when it ends, she makes a gesture that causes snow to fall upward around the Firebird, each snowflake catching its light and reflecting it back amplified, creating a display that should be impossible. Winter and flame collaborating to create beauty that neither could achieve alone. You see, Morana says as the Firebird prepares to depart, we are not enemies, the Firebird and I. We are partners in an eternal dance. It brings the promise of transformation. I provide the space for it to occur. It ignites, I cool. It beginning, I end. Without me, its fire would consume everything, leaving nothing to transform. Without it, my ice would preserve everything, leaving no room for change. The Firebird makes one last circuit of the Death Kingdom. And as it does, you notice something remarkable. The patterns its flight has traced in the air are starting to solidify, becoming architecture, becoming part of Morana's palace. The Death Goddess is incorporating the Firebird's passage into her realm, making the memory of transformation a permanent part of the landscape of ending. As the Firebird flies toward the horizon that doesn't exist in this place, where all horizons have already been crossed, its light diminishes but doesn't disappear. Instead, it becomes like a star, a point of reference, a reminder that even in the deepest winter, even in the heart of Death's kingdom, something burns that cannot be extinguished. Something flies that cannot be grounded. Something transforms that cannot be fixed in place. But the Firebird's departure has stirred something else in this realm, awakened something that was sleeping, or perhaps pretending to sleep. From the forests that border Morana's palace, a sound emerges that is part cackle, part grinding, part the creaking of old wood and older bones. It is a sound that every child knows instinctively, even if they've never heard it before. It is the sound of approach, of inevitable arrival, of a visit that you've been expecting and dreading in equal measure. Through the trees that have never known leaves, between the shadows that cast objects rather than the other way around, something moves that is both structure and creature, both home and horror, both invitation and warning. The chicken legs appear first, scaled and terrible, each step leaving prints that steam despite the cold. Then the house itself becomes visible, rotating slowly on those impossible legs, its windows glowing with light that illuminates nothing. Its door opening and closing like a mouth that's forgotten what it wants to say. Baba Yaga is coming, and with her comes a different kind of wisdom, a different flavor of fear, a different understanding of what it means to be alive in a world where death and life dance together, where gods wage eternal war, where firebirds trail transformation across skies that have forgotten what it means to be simply blue. The house walks rather than approaches. Each step of those massive chicken legs deliberate and considered, as if the earth itself must prepare to receive such weight, such age, such accumulated power. The legs are scaled like a bird's, but sized like ancient trees, yellow and gray, with talons that dig furrows in the frozen ground, furrows that immediately fill with mist that might be the breath of the earth or might be something else entirely, something older, something that prefers not to be named. The house itself defies single perception. Look at it directly, and it seems small, barely larger than a peasant's hut, made of logs that might have been cut yesterday or might have been growing since before humans invented axes. Look at it sideways, from the corner of your eye, and it looms vast as a palace, with rooms upon rooms, windows that open onto different seasons, chimneys that exhale smoke from fires burning in other dimensions. It rotates as it walks, this impossible house, turning on its chicken legs with a grinding sound like millstones working, like bones rubbing together, like the earth itself groaning under weight it was never meant to bear. The rotation isn't random. It follows patterns that hurt to perceive, that make your eyes water if you try to track them, patterns that suggest the house is not just moving through space, but also through time, through possibility, through the spaces between what is and what might be. The fence that surrounds the house moves with it, though fence is too simple a word for this barrier. It's made of bones, human bones, or bones that were human once, or bones that will be human someday. Each post is topped with a skull, and the skulls glow with cold fire that provides light without warmth, illumination without comfort. The fence exists in more dimensions than 3, sometimes seeming to enclose the house, sometimes seeming to enclose everything except the house, sometimes seeming to enclose concepts rather than space. Through the gaps in this fence of bones, you glimpse things that shouldn't be there. Gardens where iron flowers grow, their petals sharp enough to cut shadows. Wells that descend not into water, but into liquid darkness that reflects not your face, but your fears. Mortars and pestles large enough to grind mountains into flour, and perhaps they have. Perhaps that's what sand is. The flour of mountains ground in Baba Yaga's tools. The door of the house opens, though open might be the wrong word. It becomes permeable, a suggestion rather than a barrier, and from within emerges the owner, the inhabitant, the force that gives this impossible structure its purpose and power. Baba Yaga doesn't walk out so much as unfold from the doorway, as if she's larger than the opening, but adjusts herself to fit through it, or perhaps adjusts it to allow her passage. She is ancient beyond ancient, old in ways that have nothing to do with time and everything to do with accumulated experience, accumulated power, accumulated hunger. Her iron teeth gleam in the non-light of her skull torches, each tooth carved with symbols that shift when you're not looking directly at them. Her nose is long as stories make it, but the stories don't convey how it seems to smell, not just odors, but intentions, possibilities, the potential futures that cluster around every choice. Her hair is white as bone, as snow, as the spaces between stars, and it moves with its own will, each strand questing, searching, tasting the air for flavors that only she can interpret. She wears a dress that might be made of night itself, cut and sewn into shape, decorated with stars that aren't in any constellation visible from Earth. Over this, a cloak of what looks like feathers but might be shadows, might be the wings of birds that never existed, might be the physical manifestation of every nightmare about flying and falling. Her eyes are the most terrible and wonderful thing about her. They've seen the first lie ever told and every lie since. They've watched civilizations rise with such hope and fall with such despair. They've observed the gods themselves being born, making their mistakes, learning or failing to learn. In those eyes lives the wisdom of someone who has been both hero and villain in 1,000 stories, who has eaten heroes and saved children, who has been both the test and the reward. She speaks, and her voice is like millstones grinding, like wind through empty houses, like the last breath before the scream. So, another traveler in Morana's realm, another seeker thinking to understand death by visiting it rather than experiencing it. How disappointing, how predictable, how human. She cackles, and the sound reshapes the air, makes the skulls on her fence posts grin wider, causes her house to dance more vigorously on its terrible legs. But you're here for stories, aren't you? Always stories with your kind. Always thinking that if you hear enough stories, you'll understand the truth. As if truth could be captured in words, caged in narratives, tamed by telling. She gestures, and her house settles, squatting down like a massive bird, the door opening wider to reveal an interior that shouldn't fit within the exterior dimensions. Inside, you can see flames that burn without wood, cauldrons that bubble without fire, shadows that move without objects to cast them. Come then, she says, though invitation from Baba Yaga is always both opportunity and threat. Come into my house that walks all worlds, that exists in all stories simultaneously. Come and see what it means to be the witch in the woods, the test at the crossroads, the hunger that teaches satiation its value. Inside, the house is all possibilities at once. It's a humble hut with barely room to stand, and it's a vast hall with ceilings lost in shadow. It's warm as a womb and cold as the grave. It's welcoming as home and alien as the spaces between stars. The perspective shifts with each blink, each breath, each heartbeat, as if the house is trying on different realities to see which one fits the current moment best. Objects fill the space, though fill implies a relationship with space that doesn't quite apply here. The mortar and pestle she flies through the skies, large enough to hold a person, small enough to fit in your palm. Both sizes simultaneously true. Jars containing what might be ingredients for spells or might be preserved moments. Here, the last laugh of a child before they learned fear. There, the first tear of a mother who just understood loss. Beyond, the exact moment when hope transforms into despair, preserved like a pickled vegetable. Baba Yaga settles into a chair that's also a throne, that's also a tree stump, that's also the compressed bones of everyone who ever failed her tests. She produces a pipe from nowhere, or perhaps from everywhere, and lights it with a flame that burns cold, exhaling smoke that forms shapes of stories yet to be told. I am older than Morana, she says, though her words seem to argue with themselves, each syllable trying to revise the previous one. Or perhaps younger. Or perhaps we're the same age, because age is just another story humans tell themselves to make sense of sequence. I was here before the gods divided the world into sky and earth and underworld. Or perhaps I arose from that division, the necessary consequence of boundaries being drawn. She taps her pipe, and the ashes fall upward, dispersing into patterns that might be maps of places that don't exist yet. I am the test, you see, the challenge, the question that must be asked even when no one wants to hear the answer. Heroes come to me thinking they'll win my favor with cleverness or strength or virtue. They don't understand that I am not here to be won. I am here to winnow, to separate, to determine who deserves to continue their story and who becomes ingredient in someone else's tale. The house shudders, not with impact, but with something like laughter, something like hunger, something like the satisfaction of a predator that's cornered its prey but hasn't decided whether it's hungry yet. The chicken legs stamp, making the whole structure bounce. And with each bounce, you see different versions of the same room, different possibilities for how this encounter might end. But I'm also the helper, Baba Yaga continues, her iron teeth clicking together like castanets. I give magic combs that become forests, skulls that light the way home, advice that seems like nonsense until the moment it becomes the only thing that makes sense. I am harsh but fair, cruel but consistent. I follow rules, but they're my rules, older than the laws the gods wrote, older than the patterns the fates weave. She stands, and her standing fills the room, makes it smaller and larger simultaneously. She approaches you, and with each step, you see her differently. Now she's a young woman, beautiful and terrible. Now she's middle-aged, powerful and knowing. Now she's ancient beyond description, a walking accumulation of years that have weight and substance. All of these are true. All of these are her. You want to know about the gods, about Perun and Veles and their eternal dance. You want to understand Morana and her necessity, the Firebird and its transformations. But do you understand me? Do you understand what I represent in this cosmos of conflicts and cycles? She reaches out with one gnarled finger and touches your forehead. And in that touch is the weight of every choice you've ever made, every test you've ever faced, every moment when you could have been cruel or kind and chose. You see yourself reflected in her iron teeth, but the reflection shows not your appearance, but your essence, the core of what you are when all pretense is stripped away. I am the wildness that civilization tries to forget, she says. I am the hunger that politeness tries to deny. I am the death that doesn't serve Morana's kingdom, but my own appetite. I am the chaos that even Veles finds excessive. I am the storm that Perun cannot command. I am the fire the Firebird cannot kindle. I am the question mark at the end of every certain statement. The house begins to move again, the chicken legs lifting it from its squatting position, beginning to walk in a direction that doesn't exist in normal space. As it moves, you see through the windows, or are they mirrors, or are they paintings, or are they prophecies? Glimpses of other places, other times, other stories where Baba Yaga plays different roles but is always essentially herself. But now, she says, cackling again, the sound like breaking glass, like breaking promises, like breaking fast after a long hunger. We approach the tree, the great tree that holds all the worlds, that connects all the realms, that stands at the center of everything while having no center itself. Even I must show respect to the tree, for without it, there would be no branches for my house to sometimes perch upon, no roots for my herbs to grow among, no trunk to measure myself against and find myself appropriately small. Through the windows of the walking house, you begin to see it in the distance, though distance here is negotiable, subjective, more about relationship than measurement. The world tree rises from somewhere below the bottom of existence to somewhere above the top of possibility. It is vast beyond vastness, its trunk so large that entire worlds could exist in the furrows of its bark and never know they were part of something larger. Baba Yaga's house walks toward it, the chicken legs covering impossible distances with each step, moving through space in ways that would break a physicist's mind. And as you approach the tree, you realize that everything you've experienced so far, Perun's mountain, Veles's caves, Morana's winter palace, the Firebird's flight path, and now Baba Yaga's walking house, all of these exist in relation to the tree, orbited like planets around a sun, like thoughts around a central idea, like variations on an eternal theme. The tree grows larger with each step of Baba Yaga's house, though larger implies it was smaller before, and that's not quite right. It's more that your ability to perceive it expands, like eyes adjusting to darkness reveal what was always there. The world tree doesn't exist in space so much as space exists in relation to it. It is the axis around which all existence turns, the spine of reality, the first thing that was vertical in a universe that hadn't yet invented up and down. Its roots plunge into depths that have no bottom, spreading through the underworld like veins through a body, like thoughts through a mind, like stories through a culture. Each route is itself massive as a mountain range, and along these routes travel the dead under Veles' guidance. Messages from Morana's kingdom, and things that have no names, because naming them would give them more power than the world could safely contain. The trunk rises through the middle world, our world, the world of mortal concerns and mortal time. But even here, in the realm of the familiar, the tree is impossible. Its bark is composed of what looks like scales, or perhaps plates of armor, or perhaps pages from every book ever written or ever to be written. The patterns in the bark shift constantly, showing maps of territories that don't exist, family trees of gods no one worships anymore, musical notation for symphonies that won't be composed for 1,000 years. And the branches reach into the heavens, into Perun's domain, and beyond, into realms where different rules apply, where thought is substance and substance is negotiable. The branches divide and subdivide in patterns that mirror the branching of rivers, the branching of lightning, the branching of decisions into consequences. At the end of each twig burns a star, or perhaps the stars came first and the tree grew to support them. Or perhaps both are true, or neither. Baba Yaga's house settles at the base of the tree, the chicken legs folding beneath it with a sound like satisfaction, like arrival, like coming home to a place you've never been but always known. The witch herself emerges, and for once she seems small next to something, dwarfed by the immensity of the tree that even her ancient power must acknowledge as greater. 3 realms, she says, her voice unusually subdued, almost respectful. 3 levels of existence, all connected by this impossible growth. The gods think they rule these realms, but the tree was here before gods, will be here after gods, is here in the spaces where gods fear to look. She points upward with one gnarled finger, and your perception follows, traveling up the trunk at speeds that should be dizzying, but instead feel like floating. Above, the realm of sky and order, where Perun builds his thunderclouds, and the celestial bodies follow their appointed paths. But even there, chaos intrudes. Even there, the unexpected flowers. In the upper branches, you can see nests, but these are not bird nests. They are the nests of concepts, of possibilities, of unborn worlds waiting for their chance to become real. Some contain eggs that pulse with internal light, gestating realities that will eventually hatch and either thrive or die based on laws that haven't been written yet. Others contain the abandoned shells of realities that already hatched, flew, lived their cosmic lifespans, and returned here to die where they were born. Below, Baba Yaga continues, and your perception plunges through the earth into the root system, into Veles' domain, into the spaces where death is not an ending, but a transformation. The realm of earth and chaos, where the serpent god coils around the roots, gnawing at them sometimes, protecting them at others, embodying the paradox that destruction and preservation are often the same action viewed from different angles. The roots themselves are highways for the dead, paths for spirits traveling between states of being. But they're also alive themselves, drawing sustenance from the underworld, from the decomposition of everything that has ever died, transforming ending into nourishment for new beginning. Along the roots grow fungi that glow with phosphorescent light, and these fungi are the physical manifestation of memories, of dreams, of the thoughts that slip away just as you're about to grasp them. And here, Baba Yaga says, stamping on the ground with her iron-shod foot, the middle realm, neither high nor low, neither order nor chaos, neither fully alive nor fully dead. This is where the real work happens, where sky and earth meet and argue and occasionally create something neither could imagine alone. The middle realm, you realize, is where all the stories happen. It's the place of mixture, of confusion, of possibility. Here, humans build their cities in defiance of entropy, create their art in defiance of meaninglessness, love in defiance of loss. Here, the gods must take physical form if they want to intervene, accepting limitation in exchange for agency. Here, magic and mundane interweave so tightly that it's impossible to say where one ends and the other begins. The tree itself serves as the communication system between realms. Messages travel along its bark in the form of insects that might be symbols, might be souls, might be the physical manifestation of words seeking their listeners. Sap flows through the tree, but it's not ordinary sap. It's the medium through which power transfers from realm to realm, the currency of cosmic exchange, the blood of the universe made visible and viscous. Look closer, Baba Yaga commands, and she produces from her robes a lens that might be made of ice, might be made of crystallized time, might be made of the compressed tears of everyone who ever saw something they wished they hadn't. Through this lens, the tree reveals new details. You see that what appeared to be bark is actually composed of countless tiny doors, each one opening onto a different possibility, a different path through existence. Some doors are open, revealing glimpses of worlds where history went differently, where different choices were made, where the constants you take for granted are variables. Others are closed, sealed, perhaps forever, perhaps until someone finds the right key, speaks the right word, asks the right question. Climbing the trunk, visible now through Baba Yaga's lens, are creatures that exist primarily as motion, as transition, as the act of climbing itself. They carry things between realms, messages, souls, seeds of possibility, fragments of broken natural laws that might take root in foreign soil and grow into new ways for reality to function. These climbers never rest, never arrive, exist in perpetual journey, and in their ceaseless motion, they maintain the circulation that keeps the tree alive. 9 worlds, Baba Yaga says, though her tone suggests the number might be negotiable, might change based on who's counting and how they define world. 9 major branches, each supporting a different realm, a different way of being. Your stories speak of Asgard and Midgard, of Valhalla and Hell, but those are just names for places that exist beyond naming, realms that predate the languages that try to describe them. She walks around the tree, and you follow, though walking around it should take lifetimes given its size. But here, space folds to accommodate necessity, and in a few steps, you've circumnavigated something that has no circumference. From each angle, the tree looks different. From the east, it seems to be made of morning light solidified. From the west, it appears to be carved from evening shadows. From the north, it's ice that somehow lives. From the south, it's fire that somehow endures. The tree remembers everything, Baba Yaga says, placing her hand on the bark, and where she touches, colors ripple outward like drops in water. Every spring that ever bloomed, every winter that ever froze, every story that ever was told, every silence that ever held more meaning than words. It remembers the first time someone looked up and wondered what was above the sky. It remembers the last time someone will look up at the end of all things and understand the answer. Birds perch in the branches, but these are not ordinary birds. Some are thoughts that have taken wing, ideas so powerful they achieved independent existence. Others are the souls of shamans who learned to leave their bodies and forgot the way back, now living as eternal migrants between the realms. Still others are messages from the gods, encoded in feather and song, carrying instructions or warnings or love letters between beings who exist on different levels of reality. At the very top of the tree, so high that even looking at it requires abandoning conventional concepts of direction and distance, perches an eagle. This is not just any eagle, but the eagle, the one that sees everything from its vantage point at the crown of existence. Its eyes hold the reflection of all that is, was, and will be. Its cry, when it chooses to voice it, reshapes the patterns of fate, causes the Norns to drop their spinning, makes even the gods pause in their eternal arguments. And at the very bottom, in the deepest roots, where darkness has weight and substance, gnaws the dragon or the serpent, or the thing that is sometimes dragon, sometimes serpent, sometimes just hunger given form. It gnaws at the roots not from malice but from necessity, because without this constant threat of destruction, the tree would grow complacent, would stop renewing itself, would become brittle with age and shatter at the first cosmic wind. Between the eagle and the serpent runs a squirrel, and this might seem absurd, comic even, until you understand that the squirrel is the messenger, the carrier of insults and challenges between high and low, the maintainer of the conflict that keeps both eagle and serpent sharp. Without their enmity channeled through this ridiculous, necessary creature, the tree would lose its dynamic tension, would collapse from lack of opposition. Every part necessary, Baba Yaga says, her iron teeth clicking in what might be approval. Every realm essential. The tree doesn't just connect the worlds, it is the worlds, or perhaps the worlds are it, dreaming themselves into distinctness while remaining fundamentally one organism, one life, one story told in 9 voices, or 13, or 3, or countless. The tree's presence is overwhelming, not oppressive, but simply too large for human consciousness to fully grasp. It's like trying to understand the ocean while swimming in it, like trying to comprehend time while being carried along by it. You can experience it, you can be part of it, but complete understanding remains just beyond reach, always one thought away from clarity. But now, from somewhere in the middle distance, from the twilight spaces between the tree's mighty roots, comes a sound that doesn't belong to earth or sky, doesn't belong to the solid world of bark and branch. It's the sound of water, but water that moves with purpose, with consciousness, with sorrow, that has aged into something almost like wisdom. The sound draws closer, and with it comes singing, but singing that could break hearts with its beauty, could lure ships onto rocks, could make even gods weep for losses they didn't know they'd suffered. Baba Yaga's expression changes, becomes something almost like tenderness, almost like recognition of a kindred spirit. "Ah," she says, "the water spirits come. The Rusalka rise from their rivers to dance at the tree's base, where the roots drink deep and remember what it was to be rain, to be snow, to be the tears of the first mourner. Watch carefully, traveler, for these spirits know secrets that even I handle with care. Secrets about the price of transformation, about what is lost when one thing becomes another, about the space between life and death, where neither holds sway, but both stake their claims. The singing grows clearer, multiplying from a single voice into a chorus. The chorus implies harmony, and this is something more complex. Voices that weave around each other like streams converging and diverging, like water finding its way through stone, patient and inevitable. The sound pulls at something deep in your chest, something that remembers when all life dwelt in water, when breathing air was an impossibility, when the land was just a distant dream of something that might someday be home. From between the world tree's roots, where water pools in depressions older than geography, they emerge. The Rusalka rise not with splash or disturbance, but with the smoothness of mist becoming visible, of thoughts becoming words, of sorrow becoming song. They are water given form, or perhaps form dissolved into water, existing in that space between states where solid and liquid negotiate their boundaries. Each Rusalka is unique, carrying the story of her transformation in the way she moves, the way light passes through her, the way she disturbs or doesn't disturb the surface of the water she emerges from. Some are young women, or were, or remember being, their hair flowing like waterweed, green and black and silver, moving with currents that don't exist in the air but exist in the memory of water. Others are older, their faces carrying the wisdom that comes from watching seasons change from below the surface, from seeing the same leaves fall into the same pools year after year, decomposing into the same nutrients that feed the same plants that will drop the same leaves. Their skin is pale as moonlight on water, translucent in places so you can see through to something that might be organs, might be flowing water, might be the captured reflection of the last thing they saw before drowning. Their eyes hold depths literal and metaphorical, the green of deep pools where sunlight never reaches, the black of water at night when it becomes a mirror for stars, the silver of streams in moonlight when the boundary between water and light dissolves. They wear garments that shouldn't exist, clothes made of water tension, of the surface film that allows insects to walk on streams, woven into fabric that flows and reforms constantly. These dresses trail behind them like the wake of boats, but boats that sailed in dreams rather than reality. Flowers twine in their hair, but these are water flowers, blooms that open only beneath the surface, that feed on dissolved memories rather than sunlight. One approaches, and her movement is like water flowing uphill, possible only here where the world tree's presence rewrites natural laws to accommodate narrative necessity. She speaks, and her voice is the sound of rain on leaves, of rivers over stones, of the last bubble of air escaping from drowning lungs. We are the between beings, neither alive nor dead, neither human nor spirit, neither of water nor of air. We are what happens when a story ends in water, when a life transforms through drowning, when sorrow becomes so heavy it sings and takes the sorrowful with it. Her sisters gather around her, each one a variation on the theme of transformed sorrow. Some died for love, throwing themselves into rivers when their hearts broke. Others were pushed, murdered, their last sight the face of their killer distorted through water. Still others simply slipped, accidents that became transformations, mundane deaths that opened doors to extraordinary existence. But we are not victims, another Rusalka says, her voice like ice cracking on a spring river. We are what we became, not what we were. The water received us, changed us, gave us new purpose. We are the guardians of the drowned, the singers of the depths, the dancers at the boundaries between elements. They begin to move in patterns around the world tree's roots, and their dance is like water finding its level, always flowing toward some invisible equilibrium that shifts with each step. Where their feet touch the ground, springs bubble up, small at first but growing, creating a network of streams that mirror the root system below and the branch system above. The tree, the eternal tree that has seen everything, seems to respond to their presence. Its roots drinking deeper, its leaves rustling with sounds like distant rain. Baba Yaga watches with an expression that might be respect, might be wariness, might be recognition of power that operates by different rules than her own. The Rusalka, she says quietly, know secrets that even the gods have forgotten. They know what it feels like to transform completely, to lose everything you were and become something entirely other. They know the moment when breathing stops being automatic and becomes impossible. They know the weight of water from inside. The lead Rusalka turns to you, and her gaze is like looking into a well, seeing your own reflection but distorted, improved, and diminished simultaneously. You wonder about us, land dweller, air breather, solid one. You wonder if we mourn what we were or celebrate what we've become. The answer is simpler and more complex than your questions. We are. We exist. We continue. That is enough and everything. She extends her hand, and water flows from her palm, not falling, but reaching, forming a connection between her and the space around her. In that water, images form, memories of life before transformation. But seen from underwater, all the colors shifted toward blue and green, all the sounds muffled and strange. You see weddings that ended in tears, harvests that ended in famine, loves that ended in betrayal. But you also see the moment of transformation when human became spirit, when lungs that failed to breathe air learned to filter water, when death became not an ending, but a change of medium. We dance on summer nights, she continues, her voice now multiplied as her sisters join in, creating harmonies that shouldn't exist in human vocal ranges. We rise from our waters when the moon is full and the air is warm enough to hold us without causing pain. We dance in circles that mirror the turning of the stars, the cycling of the seasons, the eternal return that governs all existence. They demonstrate, their bodies moving in ways that human joints don't permit, flowing and reforming, sometimes seeming to merge with each other before separating again. The dance tells stories without words, stories about the time before time, when water covered everything and land was just an ambitious idea. Stories about the first rain, the first river, the first dare. Stories about how water remembers everything it has ever touched, every shore it has ever lapped against, every throat it has ever passed through. Men fear us, another Rusalka says, laughing with a sound like brooks babbling over stones. They think we seduce and drown, drag the living down to join us in our watery halls. And sometimes we do, but not from malice, from loneliness, from the desire to share our understanding, from the knowledge that everyone eventually returns to water. We merely offer an early invitation to those who seem ready. The dancing intensifies, and the water they've raised from the ground begins to spiral around the world tree, climbing impossible heights, defying gravity through will alone. The tree's bark, where the water touches, becomes transparent, revealing the flow of sap within. And for a moment, sap and water merge, become one circulation system, one flow of life and death and transformation. But we also save, the lead Rusalka says, her dance slowing to something more like floating. Children who fall into wells, lovers who leap from bridges in despair but change their minds mid-fall, fishermen whose boats overturn in storms. We save them because we remember what it was to need saving, to hope for rescue even as water filled our lungs. We save them because every life saved is a small redemption for the life we lost. The other spirits nod, their hair flowing in currents that don't match any wind that's blowing. Each one carries objects from their former lives, but transformed by their time underwater. A wedding ring that now grows tiny flowers that bloom and die in seconds. A comb that straightens not hair, but the flow of streams. A mirror that reflects not faces, but souls, showing what people truly are beneath their surface presentations. One Rusalka, younger seeming than the others, or perhaps just newer to her transformation, approaches the tree directly. She places her hand on the bark, and where she touches, the tree weeps sap that might be tears, might be memory made physical. The tree knows us, she says. Its roots drink from our waters. Its leaves fall into our streams. We are part of its cycle, the water that rises through its trunk to become rain that falls to become rivers that house us. We are not separate from the tree, but part of it, like blood, is part of body. The energy of their presence begins to affect everything around them. The air becomes humid, thick with moisture that condenses on every surface, creating drops that reflect the entire scene in miniature. Each drop is a tiny world, showing the same events from slightly different angles, slightly different possibilities. In one drop, the Rusalka never died, lived long lives, died in beds surrounded by grandchildren. In another, they were saved at the last moment, pulled from water, gasping but alive. In still another, they chose their transformation, walked into water deliberately, seeking this specific form of immortality. Time moves differently in water. The lead Rusalka explains, watching you observe the drops. In air, time flows forward relentlessly. In earth, time accumulates in layers, but in water, time eddies, pools, sometimes flows backward. We can swim upstream through time when the current allows, visit our past selves, warn them or comfort them, or simply observe them. Though we cannot change what happened, only understand it better. The dancing slows further, becomes something more like swaying, like the movement of water plants in a gentle current. The Rusalka begin to sing again, but this song is different from their earlier calling. This is older, deeper, a song that predates human language, that speaks directly to the part of the brain that remembers being aquatic, that dreams sometimes of gills and fins, and the weightless freedom of suspension in fluid. Their song speaks of the time before the world tree, when there was only ocean, vast and undifferentiated. It speaks of the first separation of water from water, the first boundary, the first distinction that made existence possible. It speaks of water's patience, how it waits in clouds, in ice, in the bodies of living things, always ready to return to its preferred state, always willing to transform, but never truly destroyed. We are eternal like water is eternal. They sing in their harmony of impossibilities. We change form, but not essence. We can be vapor, liquid, solid, but we remain ourselves. We remember being rain, being river, being ocean, being tears, being blood, being the medium in which life first sparked into being. Baba Yaga, who has been silent during this display, finally speaks. The Rusalka understands something that even gods struggle with. That transformation is not loss, but change. That death is not ending, but transition. That what seems like tragedy might be the beginning of a different kind of story. They paid a terrible price for this knowledge, but having paid it, they own it completely. The Rusalka begin to withdraw, not leaving but receding, like tide going out, like water sinking into sand. But as they go, one turns back, the youngest seeming one, and speaks directly to you. Soon comes Kupala night, when the boundaries dissolve completely, when water and fire dance together, when the impossible becomes not just possible, but inevitable. On that night, we rise from all waters simultaneously, and our dancing shakes the foundations of reality. On that night, the world tree blooms with flowers that shouldn't exist, and those who dare to seek them might find their heart's desire or their soul's destruction. She smiles, an expression that is beautiful and terrible, like sunlight on water that's too deep to see the bottom. Perhaps you will still be traveling when that night arrives. Perhaps you will see us dance with fire spirits, with earth spirits, with the spirits of air and void and time itself. Perhaps you will understand then what we have always known, that all states are temporary, all forms are negotiable, all boundaries are suggestions waiting to be dissolved. The Rusalka fade back into their waters, but their presence lingers like humidity, like the sound of distant streams, like the memory of a song you heard in a dream, but can't quite recall when awake. The pools they raised around the world tree's roots remain, creating a moat of sorts, a barrier and a bridge simultaneously. The sun, or what passes for sun in this realm, where dawn and dusk are eternal negotiations, begins to shift towards something that might be evening, might be morning, might be that impossible moment when both states exist simultaneously. The light takes on qualities of gold and amber, of copper and bronze, colors that speak of transformation, of alchemy, of the ordinary becoming extraordinary through the application of heat and time and will. Baba Yaga's house stirs on its chicken legs, sensing something approaching, something that happens rarely but regularly, something that even the ancient witch regards with mixture of anticipation and caution. "It comes," she says, her iron teeth gleaming in the changing light. The night of nights, when the veil doesn't just thin but dissolves entirely, when the living and dead dance together, when ferns bloom with flowers that grant impossible wishes, when bonfires burn through the boundaries between worlds. Kupala night approaches, and with it, the culmination and beginning of all our stories. The air itself begins to thicken with anticipation, with the weight of possibility that precedes great changes, great revelations, great transformations. This is not ordinary twilight, but the twilight of twilights, when day and night agree to meet and merge and create something that is neither and both. The light takes on qualities that shouldn't exist simultaneously. The gold of noon, the silver of midnight, the rose of dawn, the purple of dusk, all bleeding together into a color that has no name because naming it would limit it. And tonight is not a night for limitations. As it was in the beginning, before the gods separated sky from earth, before Perun claimed the heights and Veles claimed the depths, there was a time when all elements danced together without hierarchy, without conflict, without the boundaries that would later define them. Kupala night remembers that time, more than remembers, recreates it, if only for these few hours when the cosmic rules relax their grip and allow older, stranger laws to resurface. The preparation begins slowly, like the first drops of rain that presage a storm. Flowers that bloom only once a year, only on this night, begin to open. Not ordinary flowers, but blooms that exist more as idea than as physical reality. Flowers that grow from the intersection of belief and desire, from the soil of story fertilized with generations of hope. Their petals are colors that the eye can't quite process, that the mind interprets differently each time you look at them. From the forests that surround the world tree, they begin to arrive. Spirits and humans, the living and the dead, beings that exist fully and beings that exist only potentially, all drawn by the same irresistible pull. This is the night when all are equal, when God and mortal, spirit and flesh, memory and reality all stand on the same ground, subject to the same temporary suspension of the usual order. Young women arrive wearing crowns of flowers that glow with their own light, each crown unique, each telling the story of its wearer's hopes for the coming year. The flowers are bound with herbs that release their scent only in darkness, only in the presence of magic, only when the impossible becomes possible. These crowns will later be cast into rivers to float like small boats carrying wishes toward their fulfillment. But for now, they adorn heads held high with the knowledge that tonight anyone can become anything. Young men come bearing torches that burn with fire stolen from lightning strikes. Fire that remembers being electricity, being pure energy, being the force that splits atoms and fuses hearts. They will use these torches to light the great bonfires, but also to light the way for those who seek the fern flower, that impossible bloom that grants the power to understand all languages, to see through all deceptions, to know the true nature of everything. But it's not just the young who gather. The old come too, those who have seen many Kupala nights, who know the patterns and the variations, who remember when they were the ones jumping over fires and casting flower crowns into dark waters. They come to witness, to remember, to add their accumulated wisdom to the night's magic, because magic without wisdom is just chaos. And tonight, while chaos is welcome, it must be chaos with purpose. The dead arrive differently, not walking, but manifesting, condensing out of mist and memory into forms that almost look solid if you don't examine them too closely. They wear the clothes they died in, or the clothes they loved most in life, or sometimes clothes from lives they might have lived if things had gone differently. They can speak tonight, can touch, can dance with the living as if the boundary between life and death was just a minor inconvenience temporarily set aside. Morana herself emerges from her winter palace, but tonight she doesn't bring cold. Tonight she brings the memory of every spring that was ever born from winter, the promise of renewal that makes death bearable. She wears a dress made of flower petals frozen at the moment of perfect bloom, and where she walks, impossible flowers push through the ground. Flowers of ice that burn, flowers of fire that freeze, flowers of contradiction that somehow resolve into harmony. Veles rises from the underworld, but not as serpent or bear. Tonight he appears as the young god, beautiful and terrible, wearing a crown of horns from every animal that ever lived, carrying a staff that is also a tree, that is also a snake, that is also the first musical instrument ever created. His presence makes the earth itself drum with rhythm, a beat that synchronizes every heart living and dead, to the same ancient tempo. Even Perun descends from his mountain, his thunder temporarily silent, his lightning contained but visible beneath his skin like veins of light. He brings clouds that rain not water but possibilities, each drop a different future that might unfold from this night's choices. His eagles perch in the world tree, their eyes reflecting not what is, but what could be, what should be, what might be, if enough people believe hard enough. The Firebird arrives in a spiral of flame that doesn't burn, leaving traces in the air that spell out words in languages that won't exist for centuries. It perches at the top of the world tree, and its presence makes every other fire burn brighter, hotter, with colors that shouldn't exist in flame. The blue of deep water, the green of new leaves, the silver of moonlight, the black of the spaces between stars. Baba Yaga's house dances on its chicken legs, spinning in patterns that mirror the rotation of galaxies, the spiral of DNA, the path of electrons around nuclei. The witch herself stands in her doorway, cackling with joy that has nothing to do with cruelty and everything to do with the pleasure of seeing all boundaries dissolved, all certainties questioned, all impossibilities made possible. The Rusalka rise from every body of water simultaneously, their hair streaming with liquid light, their songs harmonizing with the crackling of fires, the whisper of wind, the drum of earth. Tonight they can walk on land without pain, can dance with the living without drowning them, can remember what it was to be human without mourning the loss. And at the center of it all, the great bonfires are lit. These are not ordinary fires. They burn with wood from trees that grew in sacred groves, wood that has been seasoned with songs and stories, wood that remembers being alive and translates that memory into flame. The fires reach impossible heights, their smoke forming shapes of dragons and heroes, gods and monsters, all the stories that have ever been told around fires dancing now in the smoke above these ultimate fires. The jumping begins. One by one, in pairs, in groups, people leap over the flames. This is not just physical jumping, but metaphysical leaping, jumping from one state to another, from one possibility to another, from who you were to who you might become. The fire doesn't burn those who jump with pure intent, but it transforms them subtly or dramatically, depending on their need, their desire, their readiness for change. A young woman jumps and in midair becomes a bird, flies 3 times around the fire, then lands as a woman again, but with feathers in her hair that will never fall out, that will always remind her she once knew flight. A man jumps and his shadow stays behind, gains independent existence, becomes his dark twin who will walk different paths but always remain connected to him. A child jumps and ages a year with each leap, returning to childhood on the other side, but carrying the wisdom of ages in young eyes. The flower crowns are cast into the rivers, and the Rusalka guide them, ensure they reach their destinations, carry their wishes to whatever power grants such things. Some crowns sink immediately, their wishes too heavy for water to bear. Others float forever, their wishes too light to ever land anywhere. But some, the perfect ones, float exactly as far as they need to, arriving at the feet of future lovers, at the doors of future homes, at the moment of future triumphs. Now comes the seeking of the fern flower. Ferns don't flower. Every child knows this, which is exactly why their flowering on this night is so powerful. The impossible made real, the forbidden made available, the unnatural made natural for just these few hours. Those who seek it must go alone into the forest, must resist all temptations and distractions, must find the single fern in all the world that has chosen this night to bloom. The forest transforms for the seekers. Paths appear that lead in circles, that lead up when you walk down, that lead to places that don't exist except on this night. Voices call from the darkness. Loved ones who died, lovers who were never born, children who might have been. These voices promise easier prizes than the fern flower, offer comfort, companionship, completion. Many seekers abandon their quest here, choosing the certain comfort over the uncertain prize. Those who persist face greater challenges. The forest shows them their fears made manifest, their doubts given form, their failures animated and accusing. Every step forward requires acknowledging these shadows, accepting them, integrating them. The fern flower cannot be won through purity, but through wholeness, through accepting every part of yourself, light and dark, noble and base. One seeker, a young man with eyes that have seen too much sorrow, finds the fern at the stroke of midnight, when today becomes tomorrow, when Kupala night reaches its apex. The flower glows with light that isn't light, with colors that aren't colors, with a beauty that transcends beauty and enters the realm of truth. He reaches for it, and in the moment before his fingers close around the stem, he understands everything: the language of birds, the secrets of stones, the dreams of rivers, the memories of mountains. But understanding everything includes understanding the price of understanding everything. He hesitates, his hand hovering above the flower, and in that hesitation lives all of human wisdom. The knowledge that some prizes cost more than their worth, that some knowledge is too heavy to carry, that some transformations cannot be reversed. Whether he takes the flower or not, the story doesn't say. Some tales end with him plucking it and becoming the wisest man who ever lived, but also the loneliest, because complete understanding creates complete isolation. Others end with him walking away, choosing ignorance and connection over knowledge and solitude. Still others claim he took half the flower, gaining enough wisdom to help others, but not so much that he couldn't relate to them. The dancing continues through the night, circles within circles, spirals within spirals. The living dance with the dead, humans dance with spirits, gods dance with mortals. The dances tell stories that can't be told in words, stories about the time before time, about the place before place, about the silence before the first sound that started everything. In one circle, Perun and Veles dance together, not as enemies, but as partners, their eternal conflict revealed as an eternal collaboration. Their dance creates weather. Where Perun steps, lightning flashes. Where Veles steps, mist rises. Together, they create the storm that brings life-giving rain. The same storm they've been creating since the beginning, disguised as battle. In another circle, Morana dances with the Firebird, ice and flame interweaving without destroying each other, proving that opposites can coexist, can even enhance each other. Where they touch, steam rises that forms shapes of all the possibilities that exist in the space between extremes, all the moderate middles that make life livable. Baba Yaga dances alone, but her dance encompasses everyone else's, mirrors them, mocks them, honors them. She dances the dance of the eternal outsider who is also the eternal insider. the one who stands at every threshold simultaneously, who is both the test and the reward, the question and the answer, the joke and the punchline. The Rusalka dance in the waters that reflect the fires, creating patterns of light and shadow that spell out prophecies in languages that won't be invented for generations. Their dance is the dance of transformation, of adaptation, of finding beauty in tragedy, purpose in ending, beginning in conclusion. As the night progresses toward dawn, but a dawn that seems always to retreat as it's approached, the magic intensifies rather than weakens. The world tree itself begins to glow, its bark becoming transparent, revealing the flow of cosmic sap that connects all worlds, all times, all possibilities. Those who look directly at it see their own lives as part of this flow. See how their individual stories contribute to the great story, the eternal story, the story that has no beginning because it hasn't ended yet. The bonfires burn lower but brighter, condensing their heat and light into cores of pure transformation. Those who approach them now don't jump over but through, emerging on the other side, changed in ways they won't fully understand for years. A woman emerges with silver hair, though she entered with black. A man emerges with eyes that see through time, watching past and future simultaneously. A child emerges aged not in years, but in understanding, carrying wisdom that will unfold slowly over a lifetime. As it was in the beginning, when the first fire was stolen from the gods, when the first story was told to keep the darkness at bay, when the first dance was danced to celebrate survival against all odds, so it is now on Kupala night, when all these firsts are remembered, recreated, renewed. The night doesn't end so much as blend into what comes next, leaving traces of its magic in the ordinary world like glitter that can't quite be swept away, like the lingering scent of flowers that impossible bloomed, like the echo of songs that were sung in harmonies human throats can't achieve. The seekers return from the forest, some empty-handed but enriched by the search, others carrying treasures that aren't the fern flower but are precious nonetheless. A leaf that will never wilt, a stone that hums with the earth's own music, a handful of soil that will make any seed planted in it grow into something unprecedented. They are changed by their seeking, whether they found what they sought or not. The flower crowns have all been cast into the waters, the futures they carry now in motion, moving toward their destinations with the patience of rivers that know they'll eventually reach the sea. Some will arrive tomorrow, others in a year, some not for decades. But all will arrive exactly when they're meant to, because that's the magic of Kupala night. It doesn't grant wishes so much as align possibilities, doesn't force futures, but facilitates them. The dead begin to fade as dawn approaches, their forms becoming translucent, then transparent, then just memories of presence. But they don't leave sadly. They've had their night of dancing, of remembering, of being remembered. They return to Morana's realm, or Veles' caves, or wherever the dead reside when they're not visiting, carrying with them the warmth of the fires, the joy of the dances, the connections renewed with the living. The gods, too, begin to withdraw. Perun ascends to his mountain, but slowly, reluctantly, like a child being called in from play. Veles descends to his depths, but with a smile that suggests he's taking some of the night's chaos with him, storing it for future mischief. Morana returns to her winter palace, but some of the flowers from the night remain in her crown. Impossible blooms that will never die because they were born from impossibility. The Firebird makes one last circuit of the gathering, its light now soft as dawn itself, then flies away, leaving a trail of feathers that children will find in the morning and keep under their pillows, where they'll inspire dreams of flight and transformation. Baba Yaga's house walks away on its chicken legs, but walking backward, as if reluctant to leave, as if wanting to watch the night's end, as if trying to memorize every detail for the long year until the next Kupala night. The Rusalka sink back into their waters, but singing as they go, their songs promising that they'll remember everyone who danced with them, everyone who didn't fear them, everyone who saw them as they truly are. Not monsters, but transformed beings. Not threats, but teachers of the difficult lesson that sometimes transformation requires complete surrender to forces beyond our control. And at the center of it all, the world tree stands unchanged, yet somehow refreshed, as if the night's magic has watered its roots, pruned its branches, renewed its purpose as the connection between all worlds. The marks of the night are visible on its bark, handprints that glow faintly, initials carved by lovers who wanted their bond to be eternal, symbols drawn by seekers who found truths they couldn't express in words. The bonfires are now just embers, but embers that will be carefully preserved, carried home, used to light hearth fires that will burn with just a trace of Kupala night's magic throughout the year. Every meal cooked over these fires will taste a little better. Every story told by their light will be a little more magical. Every warmth they provide will warm not just the body, but the soul. As the sun rises, or as the eternal twilight brightens slightly in acknowledgement that night has passed, the participants in Kupala night disperse. But they don't return to their ordinary lives unchanged. Each carries something of the night with them. A memory of dancing with someone who died years ago. A vision of a future glimpsed in fire smoke. A understanding that boundaries are more negotiable than they appear. A knowledge that magic isn't something that exists elsewhere, but something that lives in the spaces between certainty and doubt, between possible and impossible, between what is and what might be. Now, as the echoes of Kupala night fade into memory that feels more like dream, as the eternal winter of this realm reasserts itself, but somehow gentler, somehow informed by the warmth it briefly held, we begin to see how all these stories, all these powers, all these realms are not separate but part of one great tapestry, one cosmic weaving where every thread supports and depends upon every other thread. Return your attention to Perun's mountain, but see it now not as an isolated peak, but as one pole of existence, forever connected to its opposite. The thunder god stands at his summit, his hammer raised. But understand now that the raising is eternal. The strike is eternal. The thunder is always rolling across some sky in some world. His conflict with Veles is not a battle that will someday be won, but a dance that keeps the cosmos in motion, prevents it from falling into either perfect order or complete chaos. The mountain itself is rooted deep in the earth, and those roots intertwine with the roots of the world tree, which intertwine with the caves and passages of Veles' domain. The serpent god's coils wind around these roots not to strangle, but to strengthen. The way a vine strengthens the tree it climbs, the way opposition strengthens resolve. When Perun's lightning strikes, it travels down through the mountain, through the roots, into Veles' realm, where it becomes the phosphorescent glow of cave mushrooms, the bioluminescence of underground lakes, the spark of life in the eyes of the dead who inhabit those depths. Veles transforms that divine electricity into something else, something that rises back through the earth as mist, as springs, as the moisture that forms clouds around Perun's peak. The cycle continues, has always continued, will always continue, because it is not a cycle of conflict, but a cycle of circulation. The way blood circulates through a body, carrying life to every part, returning depleted to be renewed again. Travel now to Morana's Palace of Winter, but see it not as a place of ending, but as a place of essential pause. Every story needs its pauses, its moments of rest where meaning can settle, where understanding can crystallize. Her realm is the comma in the cosmic sentence, the rest in the universal music, the winter that makes spring precious. Without her, existence would be endless accumulation without integration, endless experience without comprehension. The flowers, frozen in her crown, are connected to every flower that blooms in the living world. They are the flowers, the perfect patterns from which all earthly flowers are imperfect copies. When a flower blooms in spring, it's trying to remember what it looks like in Morana's crown, trying to achieve that perfect state of eternal bloom that exists only in the realm of ending that never quite ends. Her palace is built from compressed time, and that time includes every moment of every story we've witnessed. In one wall, frozen like an insect in amber, is the moment when Perun first raised his hammer against Veles. In another, the first flight of the Firebird, its light still burning though frozen, a paradox that defines this realm. In the floor beneath your feet, if you look closely, you can see Baba Yaga as a young witch before the iron teeth, before the walking house, when she was just beginning to understand that she would become the question that tests all answers. The Firebird's flight path connects all these realms, weaving between them like thread through fabric. Its trail of light and transformation doesn't fade, but accumulates, creating a network of possibility that underlies what appears to be fixed reality. Every feather it has ever dropped has grown into something, a tree that bears fruit of pure light, a flower that blooms only in darkness, a stream that flows uphill when no one is watching. Follow one of these feathers now. See where it landed generations ago in a forest that would eventually surround Baba Yaga's walking house. The feather didn't just land but planted itself, grew into something that is neither plant nor animal nor mineral, but something other, something that exists to prove that categories are human inventions, that nature recognizes no such boundaries. This growth attracted Baba Yaga, drew her walking house to make this forest its sometimes home. The witch herself is the weaver of all these connections, though she pretends to stand apart. Her house walks between worlds because she is the one who ensures the worlds remain connected. The chicken legs that seem so absurd are actually deeply practical. They allow her to step carefully between realities without breaking the delicate threads that connect them. Her iron teeth can bite through any barrier, but she uses them judiciously, creating openings only where openings are needed, maintaining separations where separation serves a purpose. In her hut that is bigger inside than outside, she keeps fragments of every story, every possibility, every path not taken. These aren't trophies, but responsibilities. She is the keeper of alternatives, the guardian of what-ifs, the protector of might-have-beens. When someone fails her tests, their unused potential doesn't disappear, but gets added to her collection, waiting for someone else who might need exactly that quality, that possibility, that alternative to what they are. The world tree stands at the center of all this, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that all this exists because the world tree dreams it. The tree is not just a connection between worlds, but the thing that makes worlds possible. The first vertical in a universe that didn't yet know up from down. The first living thing that chose to reach rather than simply spread. Its roots drink from the waters where the Rusalka dwell, and through this drinking, the tree knows every story of transformation, every price paid for change, every sorrow that became something else. The Rusalka don't just inhabit the waters, but are part of the tree's circulatory system, carrying nutrients of story and memory from the depths to the heights. The tree's trunk passes through the middle world, our world, the world where all these divine forces must take physical form if they want to interact with humanity. This is why the gods seem smaller here, more limited, more comprehensible. They accept these limitations because the middle world is where new stories are born, where the unexpected happens, where even gods can be surprised. The tree's branches reach into the heavens, but heaven here doesn't mean a place of perfection, but a place of potential. Among those branches nest not just the Firebird, but all the possibilities that haven't yet descended into reality. Some will never descend, will remain eternal potential. Others wait for their moment, their alignment of circumstances, their invitation to become real. Watch how the Rusalka's waters connect everything. They rise as mist that becomes clouds around Perun's mountain. They fall as rain that Veles causes to sink deep into the earth. They freeze in Morana's realm into ice that preserves memory. They become the tears that salt Baba Yaga's terrible soup. They're drawn up through the world tree's roots to become the sap that feeds cosmic leaves. They flow in endless circulation, carrying information, emotion, the dissolved essence of story from one realm to another. And Kupala night, that supreme dissolution of boundaries, is not an exception to the cosmic order, but its truest expression. On that night, the cosmos admits what it always knows, but usually pretends to forget: that all boundaries are provisional, all separations are temporary, all divisions are agreed upon illusions that serve purposes until they don't. The fern flower that blooms impossibly on that night grows from a fern that is rooted simultaneously in all realms. Its roots reach into Veles's caves, its fronds spread in the middle world. Its impossible flower blooms in Perun's sky. Its light comes from the Firebird's tail. Its power to grant understanding comes from Morana's gift of perspective that only comes with ending. Its rarity is guaranteed by Baba Yaga, who ensures that not everyone who seeks it finds it. Its very existence is made possible by the world tree in whose shadow it grows. See now how every element we've encountered is present in every other element. Perun's thunder lives in the crash of falling trees in Baba Yaga's forest. Veles' serpentine nature is present in the winding of rivers where Rusalka dwell. Morana's cold preservation exists in the morning frost that makes the Firebird's warmth precious. The Firebird's transformation is present in every change, from the turning of seasons to the moment when a child becomes adult, to the instant when life becomes death becomes life again. Baba Yaga's tests are present in every choice, every crossroads, every moment when we must decide who we are by deciding what we'll do. The world tree's pattern of roots and branches is present in our own bodies, in the branching of our blood vessels, the spreading of our neurons, the shape of our lungs. The Rusalka's transformation is present in every adaptation, every compromise, every moment when we become something we never intended to be, but learn to find beauty in what we've become. Even now, in this moment of listening, of following these stories through their eternal recursions, you are part of this weaving. Your attention adds a thread to the tapestry. Your understanding, partial though it may be, becomes part of the cosmic comprehension. Your presence in this narrative makes you a character in it, subject to its rules, participant in its patterns. The eternal winter that contains all these stories is not a static freeze, but a dynamic suspension. The way a photograph captures motion by stopping it implies the movement that came before and will come after. This winter contains all springs, all summers, all autumns. It is not the absence of other seasons, but their compression into a single eternal moment that contains all moments. As the threads weave together, pattern emerges from what seemed like chaos. The conflict between Perun and Veles creates the tension that holds the cosmos in productive balance. Morana's death creates the space for new life. The Firebird's restless transformation prevents stagnation. Baba Yaga's tests ensure that power is earned rather than given. The world tree provides the structure that allows all these forces to relate to each other. The Rusalka demonstrate that transformation, even tragic transformation, can lead to new forms of beauty. Kupalanite provides the regular release that prevents the cosmic tension from becoming cosmic rigidity. All of this exists simultaneously, eternally, in endless repetition that is never quite the same twice. Like a musical theme that returns throughout a symphony, but each time in a different key, with different harmonies, different rhythms, the stories repeat, but never exactly. Perun's hammer falls countless times, but never on the same spot. Veles steals countless treasures, but never the same treasure twice. Morana receives countless dead, but each death is unique. The Firebird flies the same path, but the landscape below is always changing. Baba Yaga asks the same questions, but accepts different answers. The world tree grows continuously while remaining exactly the same size. The Rusalka sing the same songs with eternally different words. Kupala night happens every year, but is never the same night twice. This is the weaving, the great tapestry where every thread is essential, where removing even one would cause the whole to unravel. This is the story that contains all stories, the pattern that underlies all patterns, the truth that makes all truths possible. This is the eternal winter that contains all seasons, the divine conflict that maintains all peace, the death that enables all life, the transformation that preserves all continuity, the test that validates all achievement, the tree that connects all worlds, the sorrow that deepens all joy, the night that makes all days precious. And now, dear traveler, as our long journey through the eternal winter begins to spiral toward its completion, that is not an ending, but a transformation into silence, into the space between stories where new stories are born. Let us gather the threads we've followed and weave them into something you can carry with you back into the waking world, back into the realm where gods seem distant and magic seems impossible. Though now you know better, now you understand that distance and impossibility are just perspectives, just agreements about what we'll acknowledge and what we'll ignore. The light in this eternal realm begins to shift again, not toward day or night, but toward something else, something that exists between all states, something that is both greeting and farewell, both opening and closing, both the first word of a story and the last breath of its telling. This is the light of deep knowing, of understanding that comes not through thought but through experience, through the journey itself rather than the destination. You have walked with gods tonight, but more importantly, you have seen how the gods walk with you, how their eternal struggles are reflected in your daily choices, how their cosmic battles are fought in the small decisions of ordinary life. Every time you choose between order and chaos, you participate in Perun and Veles' eternal dance. Every time you accept an ending, you visit Morana's palace. Every time you transform, the Firebird flies through your heart. Every time you face a test, Baba Yaga watches through your eyes. Every time you recognize connection where you expected separation, you water the world tree's roots. Every time you adapt to loss, you join the Rusalka's eternal dance. Every time you transcend your limitations, if only for a moment, you celebrate Kupala night. The stories we've shared are old, older than the languages they're now told in, older than the cultures that claim them, older perhaps than human consciousness itself. They are stories that were already ancient when the first storyteller tried to capture them in words. Stories that existed in the patterns of stars before anyone looked up to read them. Stories that were encoded in the DNA of the first life before that life even knew it could tell stories. But they are also new, renewed with each telling, reborn with each listener, transformed by each understanding. The Perun and Veles you now carry in your mind are not the same as the ones someone else carries, though they share essential qualities, essential relationships, essential truths. Your Morana wears a crown of different frozen flowers than someone else's. Flowers frozen at moments that resonate with your particular understanding of ending and beginning. Your Firebird flies a path traced by your own transformations, drops feathers that ignite your specific potential. The eternal winter we've traveled through is both literal and metaphorical, both outside you and within you. It is the winter of waiting, of patience, of seeds dormant beneath snow, gathering strength for their eventual emergence. It is the winter of contemplation, when the noise of growth quiets enough to hear the deeper rhythms. It is the winter of preservation, when stories are kept alive by being told around fires while the world outside sleeps. It is the winter of transformation, when what seems like death is revealed as preparation for unprecedented life. Feel now how your breathing has slowed during this journey, how your heartbeat has synchronized with rhythms older than your body, how your thoughts have expanded to accommodate paradoxes that seemed impossible when we began. You are not the same person who started this journey. You have been subtly transformed by the stories, changed by the characters, altered by the archetypal energies we've invoked and explored. This transformation is not dramatic, not the stuff of fairy tale metamorphosis where peasants become princes or humans become swans. It is quieter, deeper, the kind of change that happens at levels below consciousness, in the parts of you that dream, that remember without words, that know without learning. You have been seasoned by these stories the way wood is seasoned by time, made stronger, more resonant, more capable of carrying fire without being consumed. The gods we've met are not separate from you, but aspects of the human experience given form and name and story. Perun lives in your capacity for righteous anger, for the thunderbolt of clarity that illuminates confusion, for the strength to stand firm when firmness is required. Veles lives in your cunning, your creativity, your ability to find ways around obstacles, your connection to the deep wisdom that comes from below rather than above. Morana lives in your acceptance of endings, your ability to let go, your understanding that every death makes space for new life. The Firebird lives in your capacity for renewal, your resilience, your ability to burn without being consumed. Baba Yaga lives in your discernment, your ability to test and be tested, your wisdom that knows when to be harsh and when to be kind. The world tree lives in your sense of connection, your understanding of how all things relate, your awareness of being part of something vastly larger than yourself. The Rusalka live in your capacity to transform sorrow into beauty, loss into art, tragedy into transcendence. Kupala night lives in your moments of transcendence, when boundaries dissolve and you experience the unity that underlies apparent separation. As our stories spiral toward their pause, not their ending. For these stories have no ending, only places where the teller stops speaking, and the listener continues the tale in their own life, in their own choices, in their own transformations. Let us acknowledge what we've truly been doing during these long hours together. We have not just been telling stories, but performing a ritual, an ancient ritual of transmission where wisdom passes from voice to ear, from ear to heart, from heart to the deep places where real change happens. The words have been carriers, vehicles for something that cannot be spoken directly but can be implied, suggested, transmitted through the spaces between words, through the rhythms of sentences, through the accumulation of images that bypass rational thought and speak directly to the parts of you that predate language, that will outlast language, that understand in ways that have nothing to do with understanding and everything to do with being. You came to this journey seeking sleep, seeking rest, seeking the gentle cessation of conscious thought that allows the deeper processes to engage. And you have found it, or it has found you, or perhaps you have found each other in that place where seeker and sought reveal themselves to be the same thing viewed from different angles. But you have found more than sleep. You have found the stories that sleep tells itself, the dreams that dream the dreamer, the myths that make us rather than the myths we make. These Slavic gods, these eternal winters, these cosmic conflicts and transformations and tests, they are not just entertainment, not just cultural artifacts from a distant place and time. They are living forces that continue to shape reality, continue to influence events, continue to work their magic in the world. By listening to them, by taking them into yourself, by allowing them to resonate in your bones and blood and breath, you have become part of their continuation, part of their immortality. Tomorrow or today, whenever you return to what you call ordinary life, you will carry traces of this eternal winter with you. You might find yourself seeing thunder differently, hearing in it not just atmospheric disturbance, but divine communication. you might find yourself less afraid of endings, recognizing in them Morana's gift of completion. You might notice transformations that you previously overlooked. See the firebird's feathers falling all around you in the form of small changes, tiny renewals, minute resurrections. You might recognize Baba Yaga's tests in the challenges you face. Understand that they're not punishments, but opportunities to discover who you really are. You might sense the world tree in every connection you make, every relationship you nurture, every moment when you realize you're not separate but part of a vast, living whole. You might hear the Rusalka songs in the rain, in the rivers, in your own tears when they transform sorrow into something else. You might recognize Kupala night in every moment when the impossible happens, when boundaries dissolve, when magic reveals itself as not supernatural, but natural seen clearly. The eternal winter contains all seasons, just as these stories contain all stories, just as you contain all the possibilities of who you might become. The gods we've walked with are patient. They've waited this long for you to hear their stories. They can wait longer for you to understand them, to embody them, to live them. There is no hurry in eternity, no deadline in endlessness, no rush in the recursive cycles that have been turning since before time and will continue turning after time. Becomes irrelevant. As the light continues its eternal negotiation between states, as the eternal winter breathes its cold breath that preserves even as it seems to destroy, as the gods return to their eternal occupations that are also eternal preoccupations, know that you have been blessed by this journey, marked by it, claimed by it in the gentlest possible way. You belong to these stories now, and they belong to you. You cannot unhear them, cannot unknow them, cannot return to who you were before you heard them. But why would you want to? Why return to a world without gods when you can live in a world where gods are simply unacknowledged? Why return to linear time when you've experienced the eternal recursion? Why return to simple mortality when you've danced with the deathless? Why return to isolation when you felt the world tree's connection? Why return to mundane transformation when you've seen the firebird's flight? You don't have to return, not completely. Part of you can stay here, in the eternal winter, in the place where stories live when they're not being told, where gods rest when they're not being worshipped, where magic waits when it's not being practiced. This part of you will tend the stories, keep them alive, ensure they're ready for the next telling, the next listener, the next transformation of ancient wisdom into present understanding. And part of you will go back, must go back, to the world that needs these stories whether it knows it or not, the world that has forgotten its gods but not lost them, the world that denies magic while being entirely composed of it. You'll go back as an ambassador, a bridge, a translator between the eternal and the temporal, the mythic and the mundane, the divine and the daily. Listen now to the sound of your own breathing, how it has become the breathing of the cosmos, the inhalation that draws in possibility, the exhalation that releases actuality. Feel your heartbeat, how it echoes Perun's thunder, Veles' earthquakes, Morana's patient waiting, the firebird's wings, Baba Yaga's pestle grinding, the world tree's growth, the Rusalka's dancing, Kupala night's drums. You are the instrument through which these forces play their eternal music, the canvas on which they paint their endless variations, the page on which they write their never-ending story. The journey ends where it began, in the silence before the first word, in the darkness before the first light, in the stillness before the first movement. But it is a different silence now, a different darkness, a different stillness. It is pregnant with all the stories we've shared, all the gods we've met, all the transformations we've witnessed. It is the silence of seeds beneath snow, knowing that spring will come, has come, is coming. It is the darkness of the womb, where new life prepares for its emergence. It is the stillness of the moment before the storm, when even the air holds its breath in anticipation. Dear traveler, dear friend, dear temporary inhabitant of this eternal winter, the time has come for our paths to diverge, though in the realm of story, all paths eventually converge again. You will continue your journey in your own way, at your own pace, toward your own understanding. The stories will continue their existence in their own realm, patient as mountains, flowing as rivers, eternal as winter that contains all seasons. But before we part, before the last word fades into the lasting silence, before the eternal winter releases you back to your temporal concerns, know this: you have been changed by this journey, marked by these stories, claimed by these gods. You will never be quite the same, though the change might be so subtle that only you notice it, and perhaps not even you, not consciously, not immediately. You might notice it in small moments, when you see patterns where you used to see chaos, when you feel connection where you used to feel isolation, when you recognize the sacred in what seemed ordinary. You might notice it in your dreams, where Perun's mountain might appear, where Morana's palace might manifest, where the Firebird might fly across your sleeping sky. You might notice it in your reactions to endings, to conflicts, to transformations, finding in yourself a new patience, a new understanding, a new appreciation for the necessary tensions that keep life vital. The eternal winter whispers its farewell, though farewell in a place without time is more like until we meet again, which we will, in dreams, in stories, in the moments when the veil thins and you remember that the gods never left, that magic never departed, that the eternal winter is always just a breath away, just a story away, just a closing of the eyes away. Rest now, dear traveler. Rest in the knowledge that you have journeyed far without moving, learned much without studying, changed deeply without forcing. Rest in the eternal winter that preserves all stories, that maintains all possibilities, that connects all worlds. Rest in the embrace of gods who know your name even if you don't know theirs, who watch over your transformations with the patience of eternity, who weave your story into the great story that has no beginning and no ending, only endless, beautiful, terrible, wonderful becoming. The last words dissolve now into pure atmosphere, into the sound of snow falling on snow, into the whisper of wind through branches that have never known leaves, into the deep breathing of the cosmos itself as it dreams its eternal dream, of which we are all part, always have been part, always will be part. Sleep now, surrounded by gods and stories, cradled in eternal winter, knowing that when you wake, whether in minutes or hours, you will carry with you the gift of this journey, the blessing of these stories, the touch of the eternal on your temporal existence. The silence that follows these words is not empty, but full, not ending, but beginning, not absence, but presence. It is the silence in which all stories live, from which all words emerge, to which all sounds return. In this silence, the eternal winter breathes. In this silence, the gods continue their eternal dance. In this silence, you rest, transform, become. In this silence, the story continues without words. In this silence, everything is possible. In this silence, in